She walked into the restaurant, dressed like anyone else. No diamonds, no designer labels, no sign of the wealth she carried. To the staff, she was just another customer ordering a simple steak dinner. But what she didn't know was that her presence alone would stir something far deeper than a meal. Across the table stood a waiter who had faced silent battles most people never see. Struggles marked not by choice, but by skin. And when he finally approached her with a message, it wasn't about food, it was about truth. What could a single sentence reveal that would leave a millionaire trembling with tears? It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, the kind that wealthy people rarely think twice about. The woman, who had built her fortune quietly and lived without flaunting it, slipped into a small family-owned restaurant in the city. No cameras followed her, no headlines chased her name. She wanted to disappear into normalcy, to sit at a corner table and enjoy a simple steak, something she hadn't done in years, without reservation books or private chefs. But in that choice to blend in, to disguise herself as just another diner, she unknowingly stepped into a story much larger than herself. Because on the other side of the dining room stood a man who had lived a very different life. He wasn't draped in wealth or shielded by status. He was a black waiter working double shifts, carrying invisible scars left by years of quiet prejudice, small dismissals, cutting assumptions, the weight of always being seen as less. She thought this night would give her a taste of freedom. Instead, it would uncover a truth that money could never buy her way out of. Every movement in that room, the clink of silverware, the shuffle of shoes across the floor, was drawing her closer to an unexpected confrontation. She believed she was invisible. But soon she would realize that some things can never be hidden. The restaurant hummed with the ordinary rhythms of a night out, cutlery striking plates, conversations weaving in and out, the smell of grilled meat rising through the air. To the millionaire, it felt like a chance to breathe in anonymity, to exist without being recognized. She smiled faintly when her order was taken, unaware of the weight behind the eyes that met hers across the table. For the waiter, every shift carried a quiet tension. He had grown used to the way customers sized him up before he spoke, the way their tone shifted depending on who they thought he was. Some smiled politely, others spoke slowly, as if his skin meant his ears didn't understand. The wounds were never loud, but they stacked over time like bricks on his shoulders. Tonight, he carried them again, until he noticed something different. The woman he was serving seemed plain, almost deliberately unremarkable. But there was a carefulness about her, the kind of practiced grace that doesn't come from struggle, but from privilege. He had seen it before in boardrooms when he worked catering events, in country clubs where he wasn't allowed to linger. Something about her posture told him she was used to being unseen when she wanted to be. And yet, for once, she wasn't in control of the room. As the meal went on, whispers stirred. A couple at the bar made a snide remark when the waiter passed by, something sharp and muttered just low enough to be deniable. He pretended not to hear, but his hands tightened as he carried the plates. The millionaire noticed the change in his expression, the way his jaw clenched, but she didn't yet understand. Her steak arrived, perfectly seared, plated with care. She lifted her fork, but before she could take a bite, another customer's voice sliced through the calm, a complaint about service, laced with venom that had nothing to do with food. The words were directed at the waiter, loud enough for the room to hear, and for a moment time stopped. He stood there, steady, taking the verbal blows that had nothing to do with mistakes and everything to do with skin. The millionaire watched, her disguise suddenly feeling like a mask she no longer wanted. She thought she had slipped into the shoes of the ordinary. Instead, she had walked straight into a reality she had never truly understood. But the tension wasn't over. The manager glanced toward the scene, his expression caught between frustration and dismissal. He looked at the waiter not as someone wronged, but as a problem to smooth over quickly. The woman felt a twist in her stomach. This wasn't about customer service. This was about dignity. And as the room turned back to their meals, pretending nothing had happened, she realized she was part of an audience silently watching injustice play out in front of her. The waiter set down the final glass of water at her table, his hands steady but his eyes burning with something deeper. In that moment, she understood. He had a message to give, one that wasn't written on any menu. She just didn't know yet how powerful it would be. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by the scrape of forks and the low hum of conversation struggling to ignore what had just happened. The millionaire sat frozen, her fork hovering above her plate, but her eyes fixed on the waiter. He had endured the insults with a steady composure that seemed impossible, but she could see the storm rising inside him. And then, without warning, he leaned closer, not in anger, not in defiance, but in quiet resolve. His voice was low, steady, yet it cut through the air like glass. He told her what it meant to serve people who never saw him as human, what it felt like to smile while being reduced to nothing more than the color of his skin. He spoke of nights spent scrubbing dishes while hearing slurs whispered behind his back, of tips withheld not for service, but for prejudice. Every word was a blade of truth, sharp and undeniable. The millionaire's disguise was stripped away. She was no longer just an anonymous diner. She was a witness. And for the first time in her life, wealth, power, and status meant nothing. She could not buy her way out of the reality sitting across from her. His message wasn't just for her. It was for everyone within earshot. And though the restaurant tried to drown it in clinking glasses and forced laughter, the truth hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. She felt her throat tighten, tears pressing at the corners of her eyes. It wasn't pity, it was shame. Shame that she had lived decades shielded from a world he had to fight through every single day. And then came the line that left her trembling, the one sentence that burned through her carefully crafted disguise. "You can take off a mask and walk away. I never can." The words hit her harder than any insult, any confrontation. They shattered the illusion of safety, leaving only raw, undeniable truth. The question was no longer what she would eat, but what she would do with what she now knew. The millionaire never touched her steak. Her appetite was gone, replaced by the weight of words she couldn't shake. The waiter walked away, shoulders squared, not asking for sympathy, not even for understanding, just leaving behind a truth that demanded to be seen. For him, it was another night, another battle fought in silence. For her, it was the beginning of a wound she could no longer ignore. She left the restaurant quietly, blending back into the night as she had planned. But her disguise no longer felt like freedom. It felt like a lie, because she had witnessed something money had always shielded her from, the raw, unfiltered reality of racism that doesn't scream, but whispers, cutting deep all the same. In the days that followed, the words replayed in her mind. "You can take off a mask and walk away. I never can." That single sentence carried more weight than all her fortune combined. She began to see the world differently. The glances people exchanged, the biases hidden in small gestures, the pain carried silently by those who never had the option of escape. And that's the truth of stories like this. They don't end neatly. The millionaire went home changed, but the waiter went home unchanged, still facing the same reality tomorrow. His resilience wasn't a choice, it was survival. This wasn't just one incident in one restaurant. It's a reflection of what happens quietly in countless places every single day. Not all racism shouts in the open. Sometimes it whispers at dinner tables, lingers in workplaces, or hides in the silence of those who look away. The question is, will we keep walking past it, pretending not to see, or will we finally admit that silence makes us part of the problem? Because at the end of the night, the millionaire could leave her disguise behind, but millions of others cannot. And until we face that reality together, nothing changes. So I'll leave you with this. If one sentence can shake a millionaire to tears, what could it do to us, if only we'd listen?